up to the 30, the 20, 10, 5, Torrey Horton back to the end zone.
48-yard play. Guess who? Body up the middle, making another move to the outside. 15, 10, end zone again.
Keeps it. Nice move by Brown. He's got space. He's got 6. 35-yard touchdown for Byron Brown. A record-setting night for the South Florida quarterback.
Down so far, a little bit of a high snap. Genty right up the middle. Genty has room. Ashton Genty, give him 6.
Second and long. Lagar tries to fit it in. Ramos, it does. Ramos stays up. The Suns offense 4-3 wins. Incredible effort for Ramos.
The G5 Hive. All G5, all the time.
Welcome to the G5 Hive Live, and we are excited to bring you the G5 college football coverage that you love each and every week. I am Luke Probasco. I'm joined by my co-host, Justice, over here. Always get confused on my directions on the camera. If you are watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're watching us on X, please give us a follow, a like, a retweet. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review.
Now we're going to move into our G5 Hive waiver wire honey. This is our, fantasy college fantasy football portion of the show, and we're going to lead off here with the quarterbacks. So if you guys haven't noticed, Luke and I rotate each week. So we either take quarterbacks and receivers or running backs and tight ends, and we rotate what we do each week. Kind of gives you guys a different flavor, because this is just kind of our own, what we would do if we were running a team. All these guys are owned less than 30% on Fantrax. And I took a little bit of a different approach this week with both the quarterbacks and the running backs. So the first slide, these would be my priority guys. These first 5 guys I'm going to talk about would be my top priority. And then on the second slide, I went a little bit deeper. Maybe for you guys in deeper leagues. And these are some guys that perhaps we haven't talked about at all, or not much at all, in the past. And so I wanted to bring some fresh names and get them out there, get you thinking about these guys. So we're going to start off with, the priority quarterbacks. And for me, it's, Brendan Lewis, Nevada. He's 26% owned. He's a dual threat quarterback, good floor with upside. He's had 20 or more points in 4 of the last 5 games, with 2 of those games being over 30 points. He has matchups against Fresno State, Hawaii, Colorado State are the next 3 games. So look for him to continue to having a successful season and a lot of fantasy points for his owners. Ben Wooldridge, Louisiana, 23% owned. He is a dual threat, not quite as much as some of these other guys, but he is getting you around 25 or so rushing yards per game, as well as 210 passing yards per game, with around 2 touchdowns per week. This next guy, it's a shock to me that he is still under 30% owned. I just drafted him again in the CFF list waiver wire draft. I had the number 1 pick 2 weeks in a row in that draft, and with the number 1 pick 2 weeks in a row, I've taken Hajj-Malik Williams. I was shocked that he was still under 30% this week. He's sitting at 28%. Since he became the starter, his point totals, 37 points, 30 points, 27 points. They got Oregon State this week, Boise State the following week, and a bye. Hajj-Malik getting it done both through the air and on the ground. I don't expect him to be available past this week. I think he's going to cross over that 30% threshold. Next up, Parker Navarro, Ohio, 6%. Had a monster game this week. Since they started conference play, he's put up 30-plus points each week in conference. Again, dual threat. I think he had 176 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns this past week. They got Miami of Ohio this week. Then they play Buffalo, and then he's on a bye. Again, can't wait to see what he can do when Maxion comes around. And then the last guy, I feel like, priority ad, Spencer Petras, Utah State, only owned 6%, 27 and 23 points in the last 2 weeks. He's got New Mexico this week. Look for, 70, I think we said 78.5, 79.5. I don't remember now what the over-under was, but that looks like lots of points for Spencer Petras and Jalen Royals. After New Mexico, they have Wyoming, and then they have a bye. He does not have the rushing upside or any rushing ability like compared to these other four, but he's got an astronomical passing upside, especially this week against New Mexico. All right, these next 5 quarterbacks are folks that we haven't really talked about a lot in terms of waiver ads. First is Colton Joseph, Old Dominion, another dual threat guy, only 1% owned. He has over 60 rushing yards in the last 3 games. And then they got some shootout potential games coming up. They play Texas State this week. They're going to have to score to keep up with Texas State. After Texas State, they have Georgia Southern and then App State. I will tell you, as the Old Dominion fan, I don't believe that they can hand the job back to Grant Wilson. Colton Joseph is night and day difference. His arm strength is way better than Grant Wilson. He looks like a better runner. He's more decisive, quicker to make a decision. If there is a downside to him, he has a little bit of a gunslinger in him. But you got to take the good with the bad. He's also young, so he's going to make mistakes. But man, this kid looks like the real deal. And I don't think Grant Wilson is going to get that job back when he does get healthy. Next up, Caden Veltkamp, Western Kentucky, 28% owned, more than 20 points in 3 of 4 games, and one of those he had 40 points. They play Sam Houston, then have a bye, and they have Kennesaw State. Again, I think maybe some folks are worried about when does TJ Finley come back. I don't see how they give this job back to TJ Finley. Caden Veltkamp has looked way better than Finley looked. And I think it's going to be Caden Veltkamp's job moving forward. Next, Luke's favorite, Hunter Watson, Sam Houston. Ryan, if you're still listening, some love for Hunter Watson there at Sam Houston. Only 7% owned. He is a dual threat as well. 2 games with 100-plus rushing yards in the last 4 games. And then they have Western Kentucky, Florida National, Louisiana Tech. It looks like more rushing yards there for Hunter Watson and more deep balls to Quavez Humphreys if based on that schedule. Next, Darian Mensah, Tulane, 12% owned. He's just a good floor guy. He's super accurate. They do pull him a lot. They tend to pull him when they need to rush the ball, but he can rush. He's not super mobile, but he can. He's not a statue either. He has 2 300-yard games in the last 5 games. They play Rice, North Texas, and Charlotte coming up. And then this last guy, man, I mentioned him earlier when we talked about Louisiana Tech, busted onto the scene this past week. Evan Bullock, Louisiana Tech, 0% owned. He got his first start 2 weeks ago versus FIU. And then this past week, he had 36.5 points, 290 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Again, he's a young guy. He's a redshirt freshman. I think if he can come and play good this week against New Mexico State, he can take that job by the horns, and who knows, in that Sonny Cumbie offense. But they played New Mexico State, UTEP, and Sam Houston. Good schedule coming up. Evan Bullock's kind of a in your deeper league, someone I would be looking at to add to my rosters. All right, let's move over to the running backs. Luke, what you got?
All right, I was not so nice as Justice putting him into 5 and 5, and you were very, very pretty with it, Justice. I got you 10 of them, so all
running backs is tough.
Starting off here with top 25 Army running back Kanye Udo, Army 29% owned. He's had opportunities the last 3 weeks of 14, 7, 17. Fantasy points wise, that's 18.8, 27, 15.7. He's had 128, 140, and 97 yards the last 3 weeks. That's right. 140 yards on 7 opportunities. They've got ECU this week. I like for Kanye Udo to punch one in. And I don't know if he's going to be on this list next week. It's sitting there at 29%. Rasul Faison, Utah State. He's a part of that 2020 group. 18% owned. If you want to listen to what I had to say about him, you can go back to that 2020 group. Running back, this one might be the hot pickup of the week for me is Elijah Gilliam, Fresno State. He's 2% owned. Stroud's been banged up. In those weeks that he's been banged up, he's got 22.8 points this last week, 120 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 receptions. Then he had 16.9. He had 16.9 points. He had 18 rushes for 54 yards and 1 touchdown, 4 receptions against New Mexico in his other absence. I like Elijah Gilliam to be a hot waiver pickup this week, a plug and play. AJ Turner, Marshall, we talked about Marshall, and they're kind of up and down of this offense. He's 9% owned. He's got limited touches, but he's had fantasy outputs the last 3 games of 14.2, 20, and 10.9. It's been 9 rushes for 124 yards, 12 for 65, 1 reception and 1 rushing touchdown in that game that got him that 20 points, and then 14 for 97 yards. So really, really efficient. Then we've got Ahmad Hardy, UL Monroe. We talked about him a lot on this show. He's 12% owned, a 2020 guy, double-digit carries all season, 3 100-yard games. His last 3 games are 16.7 points, 14.2, and 31.4. He's on a bye this week, so he's a stash guy. And then you might see what I'm doing here. I'm kind of given the last 3 games because it's a lot of what have you done for me lately or in conference games. Some of these games are a little bit different. Gavin Williams, NIU 4% owned with Ontario Brown out. Williams has seen 20 and 31 opportunities in back-to-back weeks. He's been over 100 in each contest. He needs a touchdown or he'll just pretty much get like that 10 points each week. But again, we're trying to find points. This is a good opportunity. And again, conference tomorrow, we'll hear some more. We'll kind of figure out the urgency of how hard Ontario Brown's been trying to get back on the field. Well, I assume we'll hear he's been trying real hard. That's what I'm going to go with. So Gavin Williams could be a plug and play this week against Toledo, right? Is that what we said?
Yep.
And then Delbert Mims III. If you're not paying attention, Eastern Michigan, 7% owned. His last 2 weeks, he's had 30.6 and 18.5 points, 25 and 24 opportunities. He's added a reception or a target or 2 each game. They've got Central Michigan this week, and Central Michigan's been giving up a lot on the ground. I like Delbert Mims this week. UTEP, Ezel Jolly, 1% owned. I know we wanted a UTEP running back.
Javon Jackson, yeah.
I just didn't know there was going to be this freshman here. He's got 18 and 29 attempts the last 2 weeks, 15.1 and 16 points in back-to-back weeks. UTEP, I mean, isn't great, but like he's been doing well. If you're looking for a running back, Jolly might be the guy that you want at a UTEP. Running back CJ Campbell, Florida Atlantic, he's 20% owned. In his last 4 games, he's averaging 28.15 fantasy points. During that same time, he has rushed for 6 touchdowns. He has had 15 targets. One of those games against Wagner, he did not record a target. He's converted 11 of those 15 targets in receptions. Why do I keep talking about this? Receptions? Well, guys, they have UTSA this week, and Dean Connors led the Rice Owls in receiving yards against UTSA. I expect CJ Campbell to have a nice game in the receiving department here. And then another one, Sam Scott, Wyoming, 1% owned. His last 3 weeks, he's had 14, 21, and 23 opportunities, which equates to 18.1, 16.7, and 17.6 points the last 3 weeks. He's had a touchdown in each of the last 3 games. Those are my running backs that I wanted to highlight.
One guy I want to mention, because I drafted him in the CFF list draft yesterday, and it's kind of a long shot, dark horse kind of play, and that's redshirt freshman DJ McKinney, Sam Houston, came on really super strong that last game, and I don't know. I don't know if they were hiding him or they were just waiting to show him. But man, he looked like the best running back there for Sam Houston. So I'm really interested to see what he does and how those carries shake out this week against Western Kentucky. Again, kind of a long shot play, super high ceiling. I feel like he's either going to get you like 20 plus points or he's going to get you like 4. But man, he was so electric in that last game.
I did not have him on the list just because of the split in that running back room. I expect to be more even. These guys I felt pretty good on, but I don't hate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, just kind of a shooting from deep, so to speak. All right, let's go to the wide receivers. Kind of did the same thing here. These first 5 guys would be my priority guys. And we're going to start off with Kenny Womack, Western Michigan, 25% owned, double-digit points since his return, and he's had 9, 9, and 5 targets. He is the man that makes that Bronco offense go in terms of passing offense. Next up, a guy that I've been super high on the last 2 weeks. I've drafted him both times in the CFF list draft, and that's Raylan Sharp, Fresno State, 6% owned. The last 4 weeks in targets, 9, 7, 16, and 7, 18.2 points, 15.9 points, 21.6 points, and 12 points. Look for Raylan Sharp to kind of lead that Bulldogs offense again this week. Next up, Oren Singleton, Eastern Michigan, 8% owned. In the last 4 weeks, he's gotten 10 targets, 11 targets, 12 targets, and 6 targets. Just getting it done. Number one receiver there for Cole Schneider and the Eastern Michigan Eagles. Dean Patterson, Florida International. We've talked about him earlier. Only 5% owned. He's had 25 plus points in 2 of the last 3 weeks. And I'm going to talk about his running mate here in a second. And then Adrian Norton, Akron. He's someone that we learned about when we did the Akron team preview about how Adrian Norton was going to be the wide receiver 1 this year out of the slot. He is 7% owned. His targets in the last 5 games, 11, 9, 9, 7, and 13. He's just a target monster. And I don't know if you've noticed this, Luke, but there seems to be a common theme here, especially when we talk about the waivers, and that's guys in the MAC. When they get to MAC conference play, the MAC plays a tough out-of-conference schedule. When they get to MAC play, these guys really shine. I think folks either give up on them too early because they're playing the Georgias and Alabamas of the world, and they're not patient. And so, that's just kind of a lesson. Like when you draft a MAC guy, you need to understand that you're drafting them for conference play. So don't give up on them too early. Adrian Norton, Ben Finley's favorite target there for the Zips.
I want to mention one, Raylan Sharp, Fresno State. You said that he's been breaking out lately, but I feel like he's going to have a great shot to keep that going because we did not mention it in the injury section, but I don't anticipate seeing Josiah Freeman out there for the Bulldogs. So Raylan Sharp continuing to get looks, and I like him going forward.
All right, my next 5 receivers, and I messed up a graphic. I see it right away. Luke Floria, he's not at Western Michigan. He is at Kent State. He's 15% owned, 11 targets this week, 25 points. And the passing game is super concentrated between Luke Floria and Krishan Big Play McCray. Next up, Omari Hayes, Florida Atlantic. I think he was someone that folks were high on to start the year. Folks gave up on him, but it seems like he's starting to heat up. He's 9% owned. He has 17 or more points in the last 2 games. Looking like the leading receiver there for the Owls. Next up, Junior Vanderross, Toledo, 16% owned. He's not a super high ceiling guy, but he has a great floor, averaging 15.3 points per game for Toledo. He might take a bit of a hit, though, if Tucker Gleason is out for an extended period. As I talked earlier, Eric Rivers, Florida International, Dean Patterson's teammate, again having a great season, 7% owned. He's got you a good floor. His last 5 games, 14.5 points, 22.7 points, 13.1 points, 20.1 points, and 10.6 points. Him and Dean Patterson leading that Panthers offense, catching the balls from Keon Jenkins. And rounding out the receivers, Jaden Williams from Texas State, 23% owned. Texas State receivers can be a bit up and down. It's like, who is the flavor of the week, so to speak? I would say next to Joey Hobart, Jaden Williams has been the most consistent. He's got 11.5, 18.3, 23.3, and 23.5 points in the last 4 games. And that's going to do it for the waiver wire wide receivers. Next up, tight ends. What you got, Luke?
All right, tight ends. All of these guys, so I try to be real selective here. All of these guys are getting 3+ receptions and 40+ yards weekly average on the season. So they're getting you at least 7 points. So you got Dorian Fleming, Georgia State, 23% owned. He's the 2020 guy. He's getting you 6 targets, 4 receptions, 46 yards a game. You got John Michael Gillenborg, Wyoming, 20% owned, 110.6. Why did I put that? I don't think that's right. 10.6, 11, and 8.8 points the last 3 weeks. He's had targets of 7, 5, and 8. He's had receptions 5, 4, and 4. Receiving yards has been 56, 70, and 48. So, man, if he could have got you 110.6 points, that would have been amazing. But like I said, 10.6.
Maybe he's going to do it this week. They play San Jose State, I think, right? So maybe it'll be a shootout.
So, yeah, 10.6, 11, 8.8 the last 3 weeks. Kind of started off, he had I think it was a knee injury or leg injury, whatever it was, kept him out for a little bit, but he's starting to heat up here. Terrence Carter, Louisiana, 9% owned. Again, he was in that 2020 guys. His last 4 games, targets are 6, 3, 6, 6. Receptions are 4, 1, 6, 4. Reception yardage is 79, 14, 64, 107. Fantasy point-wise, 17.9, 2.4, 12.4, 20.7. Kind of a boom bust, but there's been a lot more booms. And when you're looking for a tight end position, those scores are pretty nice. Tyler Thompson, he was on the 2020 list last week, but Terrence Carter replaced him this week. Taylor Thompson out of James Madison, 14% owned. His last 4 games, targets 4, 7, 9, 3. Receptions are 2, 5, 5, 2. Yardage is 26, 91, 59, 58. Point-wise, you got 10.6, 20.1, 10.9, 13.8. He's got a touchdown in 3 of his last 4 games. So all solid there. Honestly, this waiver wire for tight ends, I'm like, wow, that's a pretty nice. Those are pretty nice stats there. And then 2 guys who don't fit, like what I said earlier, of getting you 3+ receptions and 40+ yards per week. Anthony Torres, Toledo, 21% owned. He scored a touchdown in 3 of his last 4 weeks. He's leading the G5 with Harold Fanon with 5 touchdowns from the tight end position. And then while he's hurt, you got Jacob Newell out of Akron, 16% owned. He's got 5 targets, 4 receptions, and 30 yards per game. So those guys don't fit, but they're good dart throws to get you a touchdown. Again, Jacob Newell hurt, but a good name to know nonetheless. So that is going to do it for us this week. We've got come back and join us next week as we discuss what happened in Week 8, as well as look forward to Week 9 of the 2024 season, as well as bring you up to date on all the latest news and happenings in the world of G5 college football. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're watching us on X, please give us a retweet, a like, and a follow. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please subscribe. Leave those 5-star rating and reviews. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.